Welcome to another episode of Creative Leaders Unplugged, a podcast brought to you by Future Skills Academy. I'm Morgan, here with Arna, and today we're talking to Miikka Leinonen. And Miikka is just, as he, I don't know if I should summarize him as he describes himself in the end, but he says he's just an ant on the anthill of life. Um,
The anthill
but
of life.
but he's a very interesting ant,
Yeah.
and I really enjoyed the conversation. It was very theoretical, not theoretical, philosophical.
Yeah. So interesting to me also to have him on the show. So I spoke to him many years ago. I did so he kind of showed his sort of the way he runs workshops with his company, Ghost Company. And this is years ago, way before the whole AI kind of thing that's
Mhm.
happening at the moment. And he was already using AI to summarize conversations. So something he talks about in the
Yeah.
podcast as well, that he would kind of have a session. People would have conversations around a topic and using some tools, what have you. But then that would be captured in AI, and AI would create a summary of that. And that summary would then be cut into different topics, and then people would start discussing that again, and that's sort of that interaction, that interplay with AI. That
Mhm.
was the first time I've ever heard of that. Someone really using that in a as a facilitator in a workshop.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. And then so I thought it would be really nice to have him on the show. And then also he wrote I think his second book, but the Intangible Future, which is also really interesting as a book itself. Now there's
Mhm.
no video, but because all the images are AI as well. So
Cool.
he's like, he's really going out there and saying, looking for the sort of the, you know, sort of the edge of what is acceptable.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
fascinating how it makes you feel in a certain way. It's like a bit eerie. It's like, it's because you feel these photos are not real photos,
Okay.
and it's a bit weird, but it belongs very much to the book because it's about this intangible future. So
Yeah.
the sort of the format itself is sort of, yeah, it's kind of it's yeah, and the form, the sort of the design and the content is sort of, it kind of gives you the same kind of sense of, ooh, something's happening.
Yeah.
So
That's cool. That's cool. And I think this conversation's because we talk about the future, the intangible future. We also talk a bit about communities and the importance of intangible things
yeah,
around other people. Yeah. And I
yeah,
think the the stepping into the uncertainty, I feel we didn't talk about it explicitly, but if I had to make a team of people to step with me into an uncertain future, I feel like he'd be a very strong candidate.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, interesting. And obviously it also, yes, I mean, we talk about so many different, so we're all over the place, really. We are all over the place because, so picking the one, two, three things that I take away from this conversation. I mean, there are quite a few of those. And so obviously the intangible, so the word
Mhm.
intangible future is interesting because of course the future is intangible. It's like, yeah, because
Mm.
it's not there yet, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
somehow putting language around it again is so important, and you're like, huh, yeah. So so we need to kind of design yeah, of course, okay. So that's interesting, but also this whole story around, this before and after. So now there is a time before companies, and there's going to be a
Mm.
time after companies. What is that
Mhm.
going to look like, right? This
Yeah.
this whole mind game of, there's a before this, what we have now, what we take for granted, oil, for instance, and
Hmm.
there's going to be time after,
Yeah.
right? Because there was a before, so there's going to be an after. That's sort of the idea. Really interesting because that kind of also gives you this sense of, yeah, we're kind of in this system now, and we're not always happy with it, and it doesn't really
Hmm.
work for all of us, but there's going to be an after. Oh, that's somehow, we're like, oh yeah, that's a nice way of
At least
looking at
there's
it.
that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. To me, it kind of pinged a lot of light centers in my brain, like, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. And yeah.
Shall we
So
listen?
hope it also does the same for whoever's listening.
Well, oh, by the way, we are in Brazil for podcasts on business. We were ranked number 33.
No way.
How is that for
That is incredible. I didn't even know
weird?
people listen to our podcast, let alone in Brazil.
Maybe there are only 33 podcasts
But hey, I'll
categorized
take
in
it.
that
I'll
category.
take
Yeah,
it.
I'll
We're
take
on
it
the
too.
list. We're on the list. What an honor. Thank you, Brazil.
Thank you, Brazil. Yes. All right. Okay. Enjoy.
Please, Morgan, tell me something about you.
Yes. So my name is Morgan. I'm from the United States, but I've lived in the Netherlands now for coming on 8 years.
Okay.
And I first studied industrial design engineering, and then I went on to study, it's called Imagineering, which is basically an airy-fairy way of saying social innovation. So looking at how you can bring change to big groups of people, which is where I met Arna. So, and
Try
then
to change me.
socially, yes. And now I teach at the Hague University of Applied Sciences, and I do research there as well. So,
Okay.
yeah.
What does the future look like to you? What's going to happen?
So at times I am, in terms of like education or in general?
Whichever angle you wish to take.
Okay. Well, I think, okay, we'll start micro and then we'll go macro. So I think, so with education, I feel at times both like so devastated and heartbroken, but then also at times really hopeful. And so I'm noticing that the lows are a little lower, but the highs are also a little higher. And I feel like this also kind of applies to the real world. Like we're going to see some really terrible, terrible things, but I think there's also a lot of good, and it will just be this even more tension between the two. So that's a bit how I'm
So is that those lows and highs, are they going to be evenly distributed?
If we're lucky, if we're really lucky, I think it costs less energy to be in a low, right? Like if you wanted to destroy your life, that's very easy. But if you really want to make a good life for yourself, that really takes a lot of careful planning and or not always planning, but a lot of intentionality. And if you do make a nice life for yourself, one wrong step can also kind of start to pull you in another direction that you might not want to go. And I think this might be a bit how it's, but there's also a lot of randomness and unexplained things.
Never thought about it that way, that it takes more effort to have a good, successful life than it takes to, and it takes less energy and effort to destroy your life. I never thought of, I have to think about that for a while. I got like,
maybe that's just the worldview I've grown up with.
Yeah,
no, Morgan.
maybe it's the same with airplanes, that it takes a lot of energy to climb up, but then when you get to that cruising altitude, it doesn't consume that much energy.
Ooh,
if you
that's
stay
a nice
there.
analogy. Yeah.
And it takes no energy at all to
it's easy to glide down, but
and crashing it is really effortless, really. Is that where you were going? Is that where you were going?
I don't know. Took a nasty turn.
But then like in terms of education, there's these moments where like I'm just so disappointed by the students' lack of enthusiasm or interest or this general kind of energy that some of them tend to bring. But then when I have these individual conversations with my coaching students, they're going through a hard time and understand they're young adults, it's figuring out their way in the world. But then they'll open up and they'll share something super beautiful or super vulnerable or how they built this really cool project, but they don't know if they should put it in their portfolio because it was for their girlfriend. And, just like these beautiful things. And I'm like, that's where the beauty and stuff is. And if we can just figure out a way to also create room for these kind of things that don't necessarily fit the standard or fit the expectation, those are the things that I think can also apply on a macro level as well.
So how is the school, how is the teaching going to change in the near future?
I like this podcast, by the way. This is great. Yes, Morgan, I love this. Yeah, go.
You're asking very, very good questions, Miikka.
Basic.
I'm just going to sit back and listen to Morgan explain, because I'm curious about these things too. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're a design program. So of course we run our education a bit differently than the law program or the business program. But we have, as a program, we've really given a lot of responsibility to the students. We say in order to graduate from our 3-year program, you have to prove that you know these 60 skills. And so you then will come to us. We have like regular assessment periods. You come to us at this assessment period and you tell us which skills you want to prove. It could be any skill, but you just say, hey, I'm going to prove these 5 skills to you today. And so we really put a lot of responsibility on the students' shoulders to say, oh, these are the 5 that I want to prove, and this is how I'm going to prove them. There's not a test that they have to take or a checklist that they have to check. And so a lot of times they can feel very frustrated with this. They think our program is just a bunch of baloney. But then we've had graduates that come back and they say, you know, when I was a student, I thought that this was just very quickly thrown together and there was no like rigor to this program, right? It doesn't feel like a standardized, it doesn't feel like a professional official thing. But they're like, but this is also how it is in the real world. Nobody's coming to you with their little checklist and saying, do you meet these 5 qualifications? Okay, you can be promoted. No, it's when you can step outside and say, hey, these are the things that I think I should know. Let me show you how it's done. And so we're getting a lot of interest from other programs saying, okay, how can we do this? So I think that's one of the things, is how we can start to prepare students better for the actual real world. And of course, some of that is knowing specific skills and things, but then also giving them a bit that responsibility and motivation to see, hey, I think it would be a great idea if I learned more about this particular thing. So
Okay. But explain me this disconnect. You said that you see a lot of students that they lack energy and passion.
Mm-hmm.
Or what was the word that you used? But then you give them, you put them on the driver's seat. You give them responsibility. But
Yeah.
I would imagine that would energize them.
That's the hope. And I think it takes, because most of them are coming from the typical school system that says, you know, you have to jump this high, you have to jump this many times, like do it exactly how I tell you. And so when they realize that they're in the driver's seat, there tends to be a few reactions. One of them, of course, is being energized. One of them is being completely confused and lost. And one of them is saying, I don't want to drive. Just tell me what to do.
Yeah. I think the same applies to work also, that not all people want the driver's seat. Some very comfortable in the back seat. Yeah. And because then they can also complain a bit more.
That's very true. That's very true. And so I think you've been maybe working a few more years than I have, but then how do you experience that? Does anything of what I say, either about the future or the driver's seat, do you see that in what you do?
What we do quite often nowadays is well, we want to build engagement and build communities with corporations. And that's very interesting, because that is, for example, running a strategy program in a bigger corporation so that everybody is involved. People have a say in the strategy. And that, first of all, that's a bit confusing for the management sometimes, because they think that they know better. But typically people are very energized. People love the idea that somebody's interested in them. Somebody's interested in what they think and in their expertise, and they get to share that with others, and they get to hear what others think. And that doesn't happen at all enough, like in corporations nowadays. People are working remotely. People don't see each other. So putting people on the driver's seat, or at least reading the map, it very much energizes them. And but I don't know. Sometimes it could be also like energy that also leads into a bit of a disappointment, because those are small glimpses in their work, and maybe the rest is something that they are put in a box and told what to do.
Yeah. And I wonder if the students also experience that a bit as well. Like there's some of that, but there's still things that we're expecting of them. So it's not like they're fully in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
It's also about, especially with students, the expectation and the context in which they are in sort of in at school or in the class, or because, and I might expect, I've taught a class a long time ago and was very naive by saying, okay, we're together going to come up with an idea for what we're going to do, and let's do this all together. We're going to co-create this thing, and students were like, no, you have to tell us what to do, because we have to know, how much time and energy it's going to cost us. So because we have these other things we have to do as well, and we have to create a strategy going to survive the whole school, not just your class. And so they were really not happy with this idea that I wasn't going to tell them what we were going to be doing throughout the year. They wanted to know exactly. And you get paid for this, I was like, oh boy, so, but it's because we have trained them that way throughout school, that, they just need to kind of sit there, take it all in, and then later we're going to test them whether they still remember what we said, and then and we go like, no, that was wrong, and that was right. And that's sort of a big thing. They need to survive. And that's how it felt and often feels with students, that we're in their way, especially because of and these are, these were also young, adults, like they're in their maybe more like 17, 18, 19, something. And, socially, there's so much going on in their life. That's not, I often feel that we school kids at the wrong time in their lives, where you actually go like, they have other things as social animals. That is the thing they should be focusing on, because that's how, don't, have them sit for a whole day in a chair, listening to these boring things, when they're only worried about their friends and how they act social, how to survive socially, and all that. And so with my son, for instance, he's 12, and so now he goes to what is that called, middle school. So it's graduate, so he's primary school still, and so they sit and they do, they need to, learn how to kind of do the basic stuff. Like, of course, it's important to read and write and stuff like that, obviously, right? So, okay, so that's great. Get them ready for high school, for sure. But then the relearning is when they have like the breaks and they go out and play. That's when they really learn. That's when they learn how to deal with each other and how to deal with bullies, and how to have, and the girls and the boys, and this whole game. So important, but they don't pay attention to that at all at school for this. That's like the break. That's like the in between, when you actually, and the real learning you do when you're in the classroom, you're paying attention, That is so weird at these ages. And then when you're a teenager, like now my daughter, she's only 18, but that whole teenage time where, she has to do all these tests and these and exams, and which is so, I think it's so amazing when I look at her and doing all these tests and exams in a time that she's actually only worried about how she looks, if she's okay, if she's pretty enough, if the boys like her, and this boy, she's falling in love with that boy, and then this other girl, they did, and she was mean, and there's like this whole social mess that she's part of, and doing exams on maths and sort of geography and stuff she really doesn't care about, and her brain can't, it's like amazing that she's actually, so she graduated, by the way, which I'm very proud of, simply also because of that. I'm like, how do you pull that off? Like, this is the wrong moment in time to go and do these things. As a parent,
I think, let's say that we all have 100% of energy, 100% of focus. Like, where does that go? And I think with students, the in-between stuff, the makeup, the socializing, the messaging with your friends and all that might take like 70 or 80% of your energy and focus.
Oh, yeah.
And then still many people excel in school.
Yes.
That's
Which is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. But I love open space and on-conference methods just because of that. That the breaks, the coffee breaks or the breaks at school, they are those are the places where people really have a good time and where people learn and people get to be on the driver's seat and decide what are the topics they want to talk about and what they want to do. So I think I would love to see almost all events become open space or on conference events because
yeah. And how does it link to, so I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you because I thought it's interesting to see whether open space and
on conference
and unconferences and which I really love myself as well, but it's sort of, how does that come, because you're all into, nowadays at least, because you talk about strategy, but you're also really into community building and communities. Is that part of that? Is the open space and unconferences, is that something that links to building communities?
Well, for example, once a year we organize an event in southern Estonia, or it could be next year in Finland. It was supposed to be in Estonia and Finland, but it has been now in Estonia for many years. 100 people around the world gather for 3 days to discuss an on conference, and of course there's an underlying program. There's a cooking madness. There are these. It's part of the Kinnernet series that's founded by Yossi Vadi from Israel, and there are many events like this around the world. So there's an underlying structure, but still 100 people come together and design the agenda, the topics that we're going to talk about, and we're going to do a lot of fun stuff. And that forms a community. So in 3 days, there's a huge trust among the members. And whenever these people meet somewhere, there's this bond that has been formed in those days. And of course, if people are able to join over many years, that bond grows and people become friends. And so yeah, unconferences are a great way to build communities or strengthen communities.
When is a community a community? I mean, when do you define it as a community instead of just a group of people who come together every year?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. Well, first of all, my advice is like for anybody starting a community, don't start a community, because the community is the end result. It's not the starting point. You bring people together, and for example, with one company, family-owned company, they said that they're like a family, and then we had some workshops with them, and then their recruitment person said that, or the HR person said that let's not say that we are like a family, because that's a red flag for people that we are trying to hire. They don't want to join a new family. They've got their family. So let's not talk about that. And the same thing with any community. If you claim that, yeah, we've got this community, join this community, people are a bit hesitant. No thanks. I've got enough of that stuff. But if you start with an event, you build an event and say, come, let's talk about this and that, and let's meet again. Let's do that. Let's make this a habit. Let's have some other communications in between, blah, 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 blah. And at some point you realize that somebody says somewhere in one event, somebody says the word community. That's typically when I recognize that this has become a community. When a member recognizes that it's a community.
Because it has a shared goal, a shared kind of reason, or it creates a sort of a value that everybody recognizes as a value they really like. So it creates something that they want to come back to and saying, because I want to be part of this. I mean, it's really interesting because we use the word community quite easily. I mean, because everything's a community, and in a way we are social animals, so we are looking for connection, and so it is sort of something we do. We know, we want to kind of be part of, let's call it a tribe, but this social animal that we are kind of wants to be part of something bigger than they are themselves. So I think once you start recognizing that actually being part of a group of people elevates sort of you as just a one individual, and it kind of does something bigger than you can do on your own. But you're also part of many communities, like like you said, most of us are part of a family. We have a group of friends from school still. We might be part of do some sports. Who knows? But not every community is the same, and sort of having a group of people that come together every year, to discuss things and sort of like having sort of in an unconference. I had those groups of people that I would only meet at those events, but it was also always awesome to meet them. And I because of the pandemic, it's kind of slowed down a little bit. I really miss that sort of, but it wasn't crucial for my life. It wasn't like now I can't do what I used to do. But it's interesting how I think community and understanding of what is a community and how do you, to your point, it was really interesting. Don't start a community because you want to start a community, just go do something that makes sense. And a group of people will, if it happens, it happens. And then you turn it, but at the same time, a lot of people want to start communities. They feel there is this urge of, we need to create a community around the brand. We need to create a community because of, it creates a competitive advantage, or we create it. So I'm really interested in learning communities inside of organizations, like people who kind of share a goal of changing, learning things.
Yeah, maybe I misspoke. I mean that you might want to build a community, but don't claim it. Don't say that.
Yeah,
wow,
exactly.
like the first sentence doesn't have to be that join our community. But join our event. Come and
No, I hear you. No, because otherwise, if it's not like we have a community. You want to be part of a community, general. It doesn't matter what. Come on, we have a community.
Yeah.
Just what do you do? Doesn't matter. It's just like just a bunch of people. By the way, that sounds like fun. By the way, anyway, a pointless community. I'd like to be part of a pointless community. I just realized.
Seinfeld community.
Yeah,
it's a community about nothing.
About nothing at all, which I would actually like.
Yeah.
So if you had like a neighborhood, like, like I'm thinking, right, like literally like a neighborhood, and you're like, yeah, just anyone can join this community, you would probably still get the same types of people, right?
Yeah, that is also true. I guess so. Yeah, that's true.
And Miikka, how did you get into this? Because I think you and Arna had met previously, but this is my first time chatting with you. Yeah. How did you get into community building?
I got into communities maybe through seeing some communities that were not really communities. And I started thinking like, what is a functional community? What is a dream community? I saw these that claimed to be communities that were actually something that were maybe even a cult, or they were controlled by individuals. And I saw that's not a healthy way. And also I have very good experiences from my like teen years of being part of nice communities, and I understood the value and the warmth and how that becomes part of who you are. So that became one of the key like focal points. But then just before pandemic, a friend of mine suggested that I would meet Lana Jeleniev. Actually, she lives in Amsterdam, and that we should have a call, and we did, and she is a really passionate about communities, and during that call we said that it was nice having this chat, or let's not promise anything, or let's do something concrete. And we decided, okay, let's write a book together, and so we decided that let's write a book about how to build community-based events. And like, I don't know, 2 days later, COVID hit. So no events, nothing like that. But we had a pivot, and we decided that let's write about communities. Like, how do we build communities? And we wrote this community builder workbook.
Mhm.
And that was a fun process working with her. I learned a lot from Lana, and yeah, working with communities, and taking that into the corporate world, really trying to fit those community ideas into business. That's been great fun.
How do you take communities into the corporate world? Because in a way, I mean, you could argue that a corporation is a community. That's basically what it is. It's a bunch of people working together for sort of a similar purpose, if all is well.
Yeah,
They're part of something bigger than themselves, and they meet mostly every day, and they use, they use the same logo and the same whatever coffee machine, but it is a community, right? So
yeah.
how do you take a community into a community?
I think for many leaders, it was also like a interesting and maybe a scary wake-up call when the pandemic hit and people didn't come to the office anymore. And so what was the glue? What really bonds people together? What unites them if they're not, and what is a company anyway?
Hmm. Good
Because
point.
it was easy to define company like we've got offices and people come to these offices, and we've got clients and they've got their offices, and we trade something. But then this sort of got, much of this disappeared. We don't have offices where people are scattered all over. They're working from their bedrooms, and our clients are doing the same thing, and we are recruiting new people who we have not met physically, and like, what is a company? So that was like a fruitful place to start thinking and introducing the idea of a community. Like, one of the key elements of a company, a healthy company, is that sense of belonging, that you are actually part of something bigger. And if you want to have that sense of belonging, you have to have many things. You need to have the trust with your peers. You need to trust the system that you call company. You need to share with others. So there needs to be more interaction with people. So you need to get to know people. There needs to be this purpose that you understand that this group that we have, it's a loose group. Lots of people I don't know. Do we have something bigger than us? Are we working for something great? Is there something that drives us? And yeah, do we have this? Do you have some like sense of ownership of this, or am I just following along? And then, is it part of my identity? And I think this is the like the biggest and the most difficult part in this community building, and when it comes to corporations, is how does work become part of your identity nowadays?
Yeah, and so I'm going to ask you something about, because in a way it might connect to something I read in your book, The Intangible Future. And I don't know if that connects to me, that what you just said, this idea that, we have buildings, we have all this, the tangibles that kind of make up the business. Like, you have your office, you have your space, you have your coffee machine, you have your, that's all really tangible. And there's a whole chapter around in the book explaining the tangible through the intangible. And because I think that is a bit about, the intangibles actually what is the important part. That is actually what sort of makes up a group of people, a community that makes up that's the value that's actually being shared. It's the intangible bits. But at the same time, in a business, and I think this is just a report from the US, a research that's done in the US about how many people are happy in their jobs, and I think about 80% of the people are not happy in their jobs. So so the intangible bit is not always a positive thing. So if you explain the tangible through the intangible, it's like really I think that can be quite tough, really, because, it's because, and the business is not the building, it's not the logo, it's not the coffee machine, it's not the, that's not what the business really is. So, I mean, is that something that resonates because that kind of resonated with me when I was reading this?
Well, yeah, there are many things here. First of all, I need to address that if people are happy, then I would say that the lowest form of community is that people see some benefits, like personal benefit for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just like the early stage of community. It's I wouldn't even call that community. We call those, like, you've got audience, you've got network, you've got community. This is sort of like an audience type, that somebody commands you, somebody tells you what to do, but you get some sort of benefit out of that. It could be your paycheck, or it could be something else. In other kinds of communities, you get maybe knowledge, or you learn something, you get something else. But yeah, that means that if people are unhappy, they don't feel that they are part of the community. They are just getting something out of it, and that's it. And they would rather be somewhere else where they belong. Maybe it's their their family, or their relatives, or their friends, or something. And this doesn't invite this community. It doesn't appeal to them, and it feels really bad that it is like that. I would wish that people find a better place, so that they would have at least a couple of other things. They would have that benefit, they would have the trust, and they would have sharing. That would be so much more than just hanging on there for the salary. But yeah, I think, Arne, you touch on another topic with that explaining intangible through tangible. Like, yeah, we are the inhabitants of this physical world, but most of the work that we do is intangible. We're just sharing knowledge, and we're innovating new things, and we are working with data, and all these things but we for the sense of safety and tradition, and for also for control, we box those into tangible things. And of course there's a lot of tradition. For example, like email. We send emails, and somehow at least in my head, that is still something that we send, and it goes somewhere, and somebody receives that email, and somehow that sort of resembles something physical that we're sending somewhere. Or we're writing some notes of the meeting, and it feels like we're writing them on a paper, and we're in a virtual meeting room, and much of that wording is it comes from the physical world. So yeah, that's I don't know when we are ready to give up that.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah. Yesterday I had a conversation with someone who wanted to know my frustrations as a facilitator and using digital tools like Mural and Miro, and I was thinking, and there's lots of frustrations because technology is frustrating in general, because it creates a barrier between the people. You rather have someone like in the same room. So the whole thing is frustrating. But then I thought, to your point, actually, I thought, isn't it weird? Like if you're in Miro, for instance, that we have a whiteboard kind of, which is not really a whiteboard, and we have these post-its on there, which are not really post-its, and that's how it was imagined to be like the best solution. When actually you think about it, if you think about it, if you work in a digital space, why can't we imagine something completely different that works so much better in a digital space? How come we're still trying to pretend that we're writing post-its on a whiteboard?
Why do we still have emails is the real question. Right?
Exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, because no, but it's an interesting point if you think about it, but often you just don't, you take that for granted. Like, yeah, we try to kind of replicate the physical world digitally. I used to work for a company a long time ago, and well, long story, but one of the things that was sort of part of the company was sponsoring startups. And so there was a startup, and this is in the 90s, and they created a sort of a shopping mall, online shopping mall, that you could walk like with an avatar, like in, remember a Second Life, right?
Mhm.
You walked in through a shopping mall in a shopping street, and you walked into the street like H&M, for instance, and then bought a t-shirt, like like and even then I was like, it's fun, but I don't know, that makes no sense because it's not a real street. And but at the same time, people can get completely, lost in these worlds. Like
Mhm.
Second Life, for instance, at the time was amazing. Now the games, right? You're all in there, and now with VR, and you're kind of getting sucked into this kind of hyperspace. But my first thought, is also hearing you speak, Miikka, about this. Why do we still, it's like if you write an email, it is as if you send something physical to someone, and then that person receives it. But I don't know. Do you think? What do you imagine when you think about the future? If you take that kind of, that thought and develop that, where are we going then? Is that going to disappear? Are we going to not replicate the real kind of physical world in the digital world? Or are we going to do how are we going to communicate?
I think we need to have profound discussions on what our future is going to be. We are, well, yeah. Let me explain with one question. I with in workshops, I like to ask people, like, look at the previous workday. What concrete things did you produce? Typically, I get a long silence because nobody produces anything. If we're talking about like white collar people, then nothing gets done anymore. People are just sending emails, writing reports,
Mhm.
searching for information, having loads of meetings, but people are not producing anything. And this comes as a shock to people. They have not thought about it, that they are not producing anything, because they live in this fantasy that we're doing something. And we need to discuss, we need to wake up, we need to discuss and realize that we are not producing anything concrete.
Yeah,
But because that is sort of like that is attached to our idea of value, that we produce something. I've been very efficient, I've done this many reports, I've been to this many meetings, I've been very productive. Have you really? I think that's one thing. So we need to have a discussion. We need to like really talk, like, what is because we need to produce value, like real value. We need to understand what is the value that we are producing. And then we need to figure out, like, what are the ways that we can combine things in new ways. So not putting post-it notes on walls and not having meetings where people discuss what are the like novel ways of doing this. And quite often that might mean that these things actually disappear because they can be fully automated. And then we don't want that because we become obsolete.
Yeah.
I have to be in that meeting, because if I'm not there, if nobody's there and that stuff gets automated, we're all going to get fired.
I have to be in a meeting, and in the meeting, I have to say something smart. So my brain goes like, when can I say something now? Because I need to be heard, because if I'm here and I haven't said anything throughout the whole meeting, then, what's the point of being here? And they might think I can, be replaced. Listen, I have a, so again, long time ago, I had a job at a telco, and this is like really mid 90s, I guess, early 90s. And one of the tasks was, because I worked for a part of that telco, and that part was going to be sold off. And so they needed to know how many people actually worked there, which was to me already kind of interesting question. Like, how you don't know? It's like, so they need to kind of do a head count of the people who were working there. Well, about 3,000 people work at that part of the business. And so it was probably my first serious job. And anyway, so we were doing this research and looking at all the departments in that business, how many people would work there and what their function was. It turned out from the 3,000 people, there were about 200 people that really did not have any job anymore. Really, they had no function at all. They should have been fired, but they weren't, because their manager knew them and they knew the family and they were, talk about community, right? So these groups of people, they kind of started, and we were like, but what do you do all day? And they were always really busy. They were busy doing stuff, faxing. This is a time we still use faxes. Faxing, talk about tangible things.
Yeah.
Faxing things and being at meetings and doing, stuff. They were always busy, very busy. And I think that is so interesting and also sad in a way, that if you think about it, that, because it is about your livelihood. It's about, you have kids, you have a house, you have a mortgage, so if we are going to replace everything, no, if you can be replaced by an algorithm, you will be replaced by an algorithm. I totally believe in that, because, money, basically, because Elon needs more money, it will happen. And so, but at the same time, so the bigger discussion is going to be, how are we going to deal with people being obsolete when they're not obsolete, because they're part of human society and they're part of their neighborhoods and their families, and they're how do we see, what value do people have when they don't work? And in our capitalist mindset, if you don't have a job, you're not as valuable to society, because then you're just, what are you going to do, like Netflix all day or something like stupid? We think we are not, full valuable human beings for whatever society if we don't have a job. That mindset is, I think, is really, that's a big deal, right? So how do we deal with that discussion? Do we have, like, is that, because that moves to this kind of having this universal income, right? So everybody can get the basic income because there's money enough. I mean, Elon can pay all of us, right? Just a little bit, right? Especially
You wouldn't
now.
even miss it, to be honest.
You won't even miss it. You will
Yeah.
like, yeah. Did I have like a million trillion, or did I have
A trillion billion.
a trillion
Yeah.
billion? I got lost count. How many zeros? I'll forget it. Because he gets all the money. So if he could pay all of us to kind of just do good things for the neighborhood, and then what do you?
Can I share kind of my experience? Okay, so I haven't, I think I'll announce this publicly.
Oh.
Yeah. So I haven't been working since November because I'm going through burnout. And so the podcast has been the only thing that I've continued to do. And Arna has made it very easy, right? I just show up, I have a great conversation for an hour and a half, and then he does literally all the rest of the work.
Thank you. Which is not that much work, to be quite honest. Seriously, I also just kind of show up for just an hour, and then I don't really edit that much, because everybody we have as a guest is great.
It makes it very easy. But anyways, so I haven't, because my whole sense of self, like I've been working since I was 14, and was picking up odd jobs since before then, right? So my whole sense of identity has come through work. And I come through a family who really loved what they did. They also take pride in their work. They love the things that they contribute their time to. And so then since November, since I don't have the capacity to work, it's really been a bit of a mind shift. Like, okay, well, who am I? What do I do? How do I enjoy spending my time? Where do I get my energy? And so that was the conversation I had this morning with the doctor. Like, I'm not getting the things that bring me energy in my mind are these more producing and creating style things. But when you're officially and don't, it's finding this balance between, okay, what brings me energy, and am I producing anything? And especially as a creative and as a designer, how do I redefine this for myself? And so it's been it's been a weird thing to not work. a very weird thing, very uncomfortable thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so it's interesting to think of, like, who are we if we're not producing
No,
things?
yeah, no, exactly, right? Which is so weird, right? And you're not the only person, obviously, going through this.
Of course, yeah.
Not just because of burnout or any other kind of thing that that's I mean, way heavier on you, obviously. But some people just don't, they also are, they want to kind of do something else. They've been doing something for a long time, but they need to kind of this sense of identity through work. Right? Yeah, if you don't like the job you have, for instance, and you're looking for something else, that's also, it's such a, I don't know, it's interesting how we can shift that, because you are not your job.
Yeah.
No.
Right?
Yeah. And for me, like, I started forgetting things. So people be like, "Oh, Morgan, what do you research?" I couldn't tell them because I wasn't able to remember it. So
Ooh.
I also feel like, okay, there's a connection, now I'm forgetting it, between the, like, feeling like an algorithm, right? Like, I could just Google, okay, what does Morgan research? And you'll find an answer on my LinkedIn, right? But what value am I
Did
adding
you
to
do
this?
that?
Yeah.
Have you ever done that? You're like, what do I do?
No, but I did have to search up my phone number the other day. The doctor asked to confirm my phone number. I could not remember. It's been my phone number for 8 years. And, so, but it's
True.
One of the, I wouldn't say maybe a future jobs, but like, yeah, going back to post-it notes and workshops. One workshop format that we're doing, of course, like testing it heavily, is that we invite people to discuss. We have people around tables and we give them a topic, talk about this. You're expert in this, talk about this. And then we have a transcript out of that discussion, and then AI does a summary of that. So basically what people do is their job is to have their antennas out, and they will gather information from their world, and they will distill that into knowledge that they will share in the table, and that is recorded, and that is somehow transformed into some kind of a summary. And then that summary can be sliced and brought into different discussions, and then people can continue on those discussions and again bring value from their perspectives and share and create more value, and whatever might be the outcome. If the outcome it can be a physical thing, it can be a white paper or something else, or it could be just that we just share that to the participants and say that these were the topics, these were the general findings that you brought. Congratulations. But to allow people to be the filters of information without any other burden of producing nothing else than their ideas. That could be one of the futures of work. I don't know.
That sounds really exciting. Yeah.
Also very boring. but there's one avenue I always end up in, and I don't want to do that because corporations pay my bills, is that I believe that at some point we don't need companies anymore. We play this game that there was a time before something and there's going to be time after something. And you take anything in the world and you can say that there was a time before oil, and there's going to be time after oil. And you can have anything in the middle, and there was time before and there's going to be time after, and there's going to be time after companies because there was a time before companies. But now we're in the middle of that, and we don't see how that could be possible because we're in companies. So it's difficult to have that perspective and understand that, yeah, of course, at some point we say that these are just obsolete. This system, it had a good run, it served a purpose, but now we don't need that anymore. And one reason I say this is that when I was writing my book, that Your Business Strategy for the Intangible Future, I realized that one handicap that companies have is that that companies were really, they were like, they were born to accelerate the physical world, the physical processes, and using knowledge and all that other more intangible things but the core was to like accelerate processes, physical processes, move stuff faster and do things faster and sell faster and being excellent at that. But at some point, the maybe it was really early on, but the main metric of success was money. And money is a funny if you use it as a metric, because money in itself nowadays it's very intangible. It doesn't exist. It's just basically trust, package trust. We believe that there is something like money. We believe in the value of money, and as long as we all believe that, it exists. But when companies use that as their basically the sole metric, somebody could agree or disagree with that, but basically there's only one metric for companies, and that metric is tied to the scarcity. It only works in the scarce world of the tangible world. Nobody's going to buy something fully intangible if they don't see it producing some tangible value. So companies are stuck as a concept. They are stuck in the physical, tangible world, and we are moving on. We want happiness. We want all that intangible thing, and companies are trying to produce that, but they are stuck. They need to sell us cars for us to be happy, but we just want the happiness. We don't want the car to be happy.
But we think we don't. It's interesting because you're right, obviously, but we still kind of think we need the car because we think the car is going to make us happy.
Because that's how companies.
Exactly.
I've been working in marketing. We are very good at that.
And I think before we started recording, you were telling a brief story, right? People buy these houses. They think life is about buying a house. And you buy a house and you pay off your mortgage until you're 70, and then you're 70 and you celebrate with champagne and you're like, yeah, now I'm free. And if you're, if you're lucky, you have 20 good years left.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky. It's interesting how these things are somehow, I don't want to go back to your burnout, Morgan, and the way, but I think there's a, what you're experiencing and what many people have experienced, and I have experienced, and is that system that we created of producing and doing it faster and is something that, if you don't fit into the system, at least to me, I had that at school, even because I have dyslexia and I never really feel I fit it in. And I was always looking at other people going like, how do they function in this? How does everybody kind of just go about their business as if it's normal? And the jobs I had, I was like, oh my God, how do they, how many meetings can you actually? I can't. I fall asleep. My my eyes are tearing up. It's like terrible, horrible. How do people function? I can't function in the system that is provided to me. And I think that is, if there's one core cause of having sort of a burnout, or is that, and I think there are so many people, I think, that don't even realize they have a burnout. I have a burnout. Because now, and there has been a time that we didn't even have a name for that, but at least people are tired all the time. They come home, they're tired, and they they drag their feet, and they because if you don't really produce anything, and that's why, by the way, because that's such an interesting point. If you that's we're gonna have to think about that for a while. Like if you ask people, what did you actually produce? And you didn't really produce anything, you're like, if you haven't realized that, like, what emails, like meetings, like, because that's, for most people in offices, that's what they do. They have meetings and write emails, right? But I think I don't know if there's any research done on that, pretty sure there must be, but how many, because it ties into that unhappiness at work, right?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
whether it has such a profound impact on your physical being or your emotional kind of being, or on having sort of, to your, what you're going through,
Mhm.
Morgan,
Mhm.
forgetting things, like really having
Yeah.
that big impact on you as a functioning human being, which is like, so something's wrong. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry. It's
Yeah.
like my,
And I think it's a bit, that, from my individual case, right? There's the system and then there's me. And there was a mismatch, right? And you're talking about your dyslexia, right? You were looking around you and like, how do all these people
yeah,
do this task? It's costing me so much. And for me, the way that I was moving and operating in the system that I'm in, right? The world, living in the Netherlands, teaching at a university, all of these other things, you'd have to find a new way of being, or find a new system. And so now it becomes this renegotiation with myself, like, okay, how can I exist differently in a system that I quite like,
well, and
um
sort of realize and recognize and see as a sort of, allow yourself to be a sort of the outsider of that system, not trying to kind of do what everybody else does because
yeah,
you think the system expects that of you, and you feel guilty if you can't produce what the system says. We want this
yeah.
from you. You need to be in this another meeting, 30-minute meetings back to back, all day long, and you can't. But it is really interesting if you can't do that, and I think many people can't, by the way, but they just they just pretend they can. But by being able to allow yourself to be the observer of it. So, to me, being the outsider, for me, it became my superpower. It became something that I went like, that's really weird. Like, I could
Mm-hmm.
distance myself from it and look at it and say, wow, this is what people do all day. This is crazy. Like, oh, that's amazing that they can do it. Is really all respect for people, obviously, but it's great to be an outsider and recognize. I think that's also a healthy position to have, sort of being
Yeah.
sort of able to, kind of step back and allow yourself, give yourself permission to step back and say, yeah, so this is me. I'm not the system. I'm not my job.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
me. This is what I can do, and with that I cannot do. And find your niche, if you will, sort of
Yeah, yeah.
right.
And I think having the courage to be an outsider, or even as you said, right? There's been life before companies, and like there will be a life after companies,
I think we're ready for that.
there was a life before the internet. There's going to be a life after the internet.
The way we know it now, yeah, it's such an
Mhm.
interesting perspective because, of course, if you look at history, I mean, even if you look, just the other day, to a client, I said, do you know that like the top 500 companies, if you go back like 40 years, like most of them are not there anymore? Because you
Mm,
think this is sort of the end point. We made it. This is the end of
Yeah.
evolution, and we're like the crowning achievement, and everything we know will always be there. There will always be Apple, there will always be Google, there will always be Facebook, there will always be,
Yeah.
which is not true.
Can you imagine like three people live like sitting in a hut in Middle Ages somewhere? Think about this is the pinnacle
Yeah,
of technology. This is that we have arrived.
yeah,
Like, yeah, finally, this is the
yeah.
future.
And they did,
Yeah,
obviously.
and we are doing the same. Yeah,
Yeah,
mhm.
exactly, which is so
yeah,
funny, right? We're like, yeah,
yeah.
but no, and so I like that game of the before and then after, sort of what
Mm,
happens then, because that's
yeah.
so that is that is really important, and in a way, you know, it is also scary. So, your book about, your business strategy for the intangible future, for a lot of businesses, that's scary. Intangible future, they want to know. So my clients, for instance, we talk about, companies that need to be adaptable to, they need to be agile, they need to be kind of, they need to be innovative because they need to be, because the world is changing. Every sentence nowadays on LinkedIn, every article on LinkedIn starts with the sentence, in this fast paced changing world, something bloody, bloody, bloody. Like, which is all written by AI, by the way.
Yeah, yeah,
If
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
sentence, if it starts with that sentence, it's AI. Anyway, it's because the AI also knows that. Like AI, if you write an article with AI, it always starts with this, this fast changing world, something,
LinkedIn speak.
Yes, and this, yeah, exactly. So I mean, it is. I lost my point now.
How do you see the future? How do you see the future?
Well, no, hang on. I want to go back as well, not just the
Oh,
future,
okay.
because Miikka, sorry, because you started, according to your LinkedIn at least, as a graphic designer. That's your first job that you reported online. You said you started as a designer. So how did that happen? How did you go from being a designer, creative director, and then strategy? Because strategists and creatives are not always the same people in the minds of business. These are sometimes, because that used to be a wall that I walked into, that people, I wanted to kind of have a job at an agency, for instance, and they asked me, "What are you, a strategist or are you creative?" I said, "Well, can't I be both?" No, those are two different functions.
First of all, I think work is a game, and I'm meaning it's like a fun game that we play. I'm not. Hopefully, I'm not taking it too seriously. At times, I am, but often I feel like we should be just playing this game because it's fun, and as a game, it offers new opportunities, and I can take those. I can open that door and that door, and I go that way, this way. But for me, of course, me being a graphic designer, that was like 120 years ago. So it was not really like a jump. It was like a crawl to this point. But first of all, I think that being a graphic designer, I don't know if I was any good at that, but it taught me or it revealed the skill that I had, which was seeing the world in patterns, in simple formats, simple pictures, basically circles and triangles and squares, the basic forms of PowerPoint. And arrows, those are important. If you're going from places, you need to use arrows. But understanding that you can see the world in different shapes, and that became my superpower, which is that whatever I'm doing, I'm seeing things in different patterns, and they might be chaotic, and I understand that I need to make sense of this when it becomes like a harmony. And sometimes it might feel even like a bit of like a music to me, even though I know nothing about music, but it sounds good. When it starts to sound good, I know that I'm fairly close to the right solution. So basically I can, well, of course I can't solve anything, but I can solve quite many things. For example, when it comes to strategy, you listen to people and you collect that data and you start piling that up and understanding what's in there. And when it starts to sound right, when there's a harmony, it's right. I don't know how in other ways to explain that.
No, I get it. There's actually a wonderful documentary. It's called The Beautiful Equation, if I remember well. That's
Yeah.
actually, and it's a documentary and doing sort of interviews with these scientists, you know, and there's also stories around Einstein and in the documentary where people say if the equation, if it's beautiful, it's probably right. So the aesthetics of the equation, the way it looks, that to me was like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's so.
Same thing. A friend of mine explained, he's a sailor as well. He said that, how do you recognize a good knot? It's easy to make, it's easy to open, and it looks beautiful.
Yeah.
And the third one was really interesting because all the good knots, they are beautiful.
Yeah.
Because we recognize patterns, we recognize symmetry, so we're really geared towards symmetry and patterns, our brain. So if it has these two things, we recognize it and it means something. There's meaning to that. So it can be a good knot. I mean, it can be, so I have a boat, and when I can tie a knot that, I think it looks okay. my son, I still have to teach him. He go like, the whole thing is like, you can tell that, it looks like it's really tied up, somehow, but you're not sure, because that might not be a real knot. It's just a tangled whatever rope, it's all kind of messed up a little bit. But it can be so simple and so elegant in a way. It's such a simple way of doing so. And yeah, I think that's really, there's something really profound in that we often so for instance, when I started, so I came from a world of graphic design and all that, and as a creative director at an agency, design agency, and then I started Design Thinkers Group, and I wanted to show that design wasn't just aesthetics. It wasn't just the beauty, because I was fed up with that, because that was the only thing we were asked to do. Kind of, here's this, the lipstick on the pig, right? So here's this weird thing that nobody wants and nobody ever asked for, but can you make it look pretty, right?
You make
And
it
I was
sexy.
yeah, right. And then so I was so fed up with that, and then I moved I started Design Thinkers, and the first thing we did was kind of really distance ourselves from this aesthetics. But we had to rediscover that when actually, for instance, a very simple, very basic thing like our proposals, if we make them look really pretty, we would win the project more often.
Yep.
And we're like, oh yeah, right. I know this. Why did I forget? I rediscovered a sort of like aesthetics and beauty, and you're like, yeah, duh, but it's such a powerful thing. But then it felt so fake to me for such a long time that I really had to discard it, and I really had to go get rid of, because I didn't want it to be sort of this fake thing. But because yeah, but anyway, but I think that beauty and simplicity and to your point, if a strategy, if people, when people are the harmony in what people are saying, that we often, if we forget that is that sense of it, that feeling of it, that the sounds of it, that matters. It matters. And if you hear people talk, you can sense, you can hear, not it's like in the words they use, but even in the sounds, in the way they talk together, that they're a good team, that it's nice, it's okay. But we forget to use these senses. We forget to use, we try to be so rational, which is so irrational. I think there's something so profound in recognizing how harmony, for instance. I think that's really cool.
I think also, as you mentioned, like making good presentations to sell something. There are a lot of gimmicks that I use in doing that. But basically one key thing is that I want to use a clear agenda page. And I want to use that if it's a long presentation, I want to use that multiple times so that people know where we are and what's going to happen next. And that gives them the sense of ownership, that they're not only like passengers, they know what's coming. And I think that's just occurred to me that maybe when we're talking about harmony, when we're talking about beauty or simplicity, it's the same thing, that you present something that it has this harmony and simplicity. People have this idea that I understand it. I have the sense of ownership of that immediately when I understand it. It becomes part of them immediately because they get it. If they don't get it, if there is not that harmony that really resonates with them, they struggle and they're outside and they might be trying to understand what it is, but it's not theirs, and it's pushing away. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe. Yeah, we don't know. We don't know. The future, I have a question for you about the future. There's a before ghost company and there's an after ghost company, which is your company. So what comes after?
I don't know. That's a tough one. I have not really thought about that. now you open that door. I'm not gonna. I don't know what's gonna happen. Maybe I will end it tomorrow. Maybe that's. I don't know. No, but one thing I'm sure of is that I think we are like ants. We're in this one big anthill that we might be destroying together. But I think we all have different responsibilities. And I have taken this responsibility for myself to at least try to produce some new information or new ideas, some weirdness that might bring some new ideas to somebody else. And seems like my job is to talk about this intangible future, because I really believe that this is at least one of the ways that we can try to save ourselves is to, when we still have these companies, we need to direct them to produce this intangible value and leave this physical world alone. That might help the planet. So my job is to keep promoting and pushing companies into this direction. So in whatever format that might be, I don't know, but that's apparently what I'm going to do as an ant on this anthill. And I hope others are doing something similar, not the same thing, but pushing the envelope, taking us further into optimistic future.
Well, thank you. So I would recommend people to read your book, so because it's such a, you can't see, so we're not doing video, so you can't see the book. It's nice because there's also something, because you talked about, I hope I don't take things to my work too serious, and it's funny because it's the recommendation on the cover says most bestest. I have not read this book. Maybe I should. John Connor. So
yeah, do you know the John Connor who wrote that?
No, tell us.
He's from the Terminator movie.
See, so he should read them.
Yeah. He's the guy from the past future who traveled to the past, and yeah, he should have read the book.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So cool. So no, but I like sort of the with me that resonates, because if people take themselves too serious, it actually becomes less interesting. It's actually the playfulness, because it means that you will look for kind of the edges of things and maybe step over it every now and then it becomes interesting, because it doesn't, if you just kind of color within the lines, if you kind of, then it makes, it's like, meh, so that makes it into an interesting kind of perspective. But I'm a big fan of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy kind of a thing. So so I think there's somewhere there that I go like, oh, this kind of, I don't know why, but it's kind of is somehow in the same category of thinking about futures and using your imagination and playing with that. And yeah. So that's
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask how you see the future of the world.
I think I want to be an optimist. Yeah, everybody who says that is a pessimist. But I think I think that there is now a big hill to climb for us as a human race. I think we are destroying the planet, and many of us think that technology is going to save us, and I'm one of those, because I think we can't slow down at this point. We can't turn back. We just have to go forward faster and faster, but to the right direction. And I think there's going to be a lot of turmoil, a lot of chaos, because intangible world is also about chaos. For example, if we look at what's happening in US politics, let's say that the idea of truth in in science, for example, it is embedded into the physical, tangible world, and the quest is to find the only truth. That if you're researching something, you will want to find that one truth of the field that you're studying. But as we're moving further into the intangible, and it's a world of abundance, and many people are not so. People take liberties. They pick their truths. They choose that I don't want to believe in that. I want to believe in this one.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have these alternative universes in the intangible world, and I believe that we are seeing that now in play, that people live in different worlds on parallel universes, and that's possible. And that, of course, causes friction because we're also living on this same physical planet. So there's going to be a lot of difficulties, I would say. We are not making it easy for ourselves. And Leah, when it comes to work, when it comes to corporations, when it comes to universal pay, when it comes to all this stuff, we need to figure this stuff out, because work is going to change drastically. Not only because of AI, but because of many other things, and we need to. I don't know what's going to happen in politics. What's going to happen, because, for example, like nation states, again, there was a time before, and there's going to be a time after. Do we need these structures that we have invented at some point that can fight wars against each other? Do we really need these? And these are huge things that we need to figure out I think, fairly soon.
Yeah, I think so.
On that note,
Well, that didn't sound very optimistic.
no, it started with I want to be an optimist, and then we're all going to die. We are on this anthill we're destroying.
Yeah,
that's basically what's
oh my God. Sorry about that. No. We can make it. We just need to be smart and funny.
I think humor helps.
Totally true. Totally true. That's such a well, the optimistic part that I heard you say is that technology is going to help us. And I think that technologies should set us free of the mundane tasks that technology probably can do better than we can, and faster, and allow us the freedom to do other things, give us the time to do other meaningful things. And meaningful things meaning that we might not feel that they're meaningful now. So we need to kind of have a sort of our mental models need to kind of change a little bit. But I think technology, if we create a friend and not a foe, it will allow us to actually do other things and more meaningful things. So that I think that could be a possible future that we have to kind of start. And by the way, that actually leads me to a quote from your book, which I kind of like, is that if you do not define yourself by your future, others will define you by your past and hand you a future they prefer. So
that's the written by Martin Besovsky in the pre-word there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, which I like as a sort of an idea that it's sort of similar to this, you can design your future. It's not there. There is nothing is set in stone. It's not there yet. So we decide what the future is going to be. So if you prefer a certain future, go design it.
Yeah. Very well put.
There you go.
I like that.
That's a positive ending.
Yeah.
Shall we end on that note? Okay. Yay, we made it. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
It's an interesting conversation. We went all over the place.
Yeah.
Which I like. So, but thank you very much for this talk.
Thank you.